Good morning. I appreciate the invitation to be here and share with you, a program that I'm very fond of. I've been running now for 6 years, or director of the Louisiana Sea Grant College program. I'll start out. I'd like to use a quote that Mark Twain used quite a bit when he talked about universities. He'd say, universities have two great contributions to society. One is that they confer degrees, and the second, they conceal knowledge. So the latter one of those is what Sea Grant wants to prevent. That's the one that we're destined to try to overcome. Normally when someone gets up here and addresses you, they're talking about a 50-year future of where we're going with planning for our coastal situation. I'm going to do a little different and talk about 50 years in the past. But I do want to reflect, I think, a little bit, and I'll be glad to answer questions later as to where we are going to the future. Louisiana Sea Grant was born out of a national program that was established and founded by Congress in 1966. It was actually developed to help protect the coastal resources of the nation. And for us here in Louisiana, when this national program was initiated, even at that time, we were a very big player in the national domestic oil supply. We had the second largest fishery in the nation, and certainly we're the navigation highway for commerce. And so LSU didn't waste any time. When the national program started in 1966, because we had such a strong program, the Coastal Studies Institute and the Center for Wetland Resources, in July of 1968, LSU submitted a proposal to the National Science Foundation, and that was initial steps to establishing LSU as a Sea Grant college. That funding in July 1968 was a $198,000 grant to LSU, and at the time that was 1/3 of the total external funding to LSU. So we were a big player in LSU's research program. We became the 13th Sea Grant College program out of what are now 33 Sea Grant programs across the nation. That includes the Great Lakes, which was politically a smart move on behalf of Sea Grant to add that region. And we became, actually, the people that we hired at Sea Grant to initiate our program actually led to the development of the Department of Marine Science at LSU, and later became the College of the Coast and Environment. So we have a very strong history in developing not only the research and outreach programs, which I'm going to focus on today, but we also help build the academic program at LSU. We now have activities that embrace 14 academic institutions. We work in 19 coastal zone parishes, and we have numerous partners in state and federal agencies. We actually have 9 offices across the state. We are an extension program, much like a land grant college program. In fact, that's the model that was used in developing Sea Grant. Sometimes I tell people that when they ask me, what is a Sea Grant college? Well, a Sea Grant college is to the coast what land grant college was to agriculture. And that is to get the university research out of campuses and get it to work for coastal communities. We have about a $4.5 million budget. About $1.5 million is from NOAA. We matched that with about $1.5 from the state of Louisiana, and then we have about $1.5 million that we generate from our external grants. Our return on investment on the state money is about 6 to 1, largely again because of our funding is able to generate capabilities in our universities that go after other external grants and bring in a lot of other research resources. When you think about our Sea Grant program, what it serves, we serve 2 million people in our coastal parishes, which is 50% of the Louisiana population. And it's actually also, as many of you know, our economic engine across these 19 parishes that drive the economy of Louisiana and the nation. But it's also the most vulnerable. It is one of the most vulnerable locations, one of the most vulnerable coastal zone areas in the entire United States. So let me reflect on 6 programs that to sort of describe to you what we do, because it's very different than what you hear from the coastal master planning process. These are going to be things that are the sort of small things behind the scenes that really do. Sometimes I sort of kid people that we fill the potholes, sort of kind of program in the state, but have a real significance. We really pride ourselves in diversifying the economies of coastal communities. And particularly for us, that's our commercial and recreational fishing industries. Our commercial fishing industry is about a $2.3 billion program, a $2.3 billion economy, or a $2.3 billion industry. That is, when you look at what we generate as far as economic impact, our dockside value of our seafood is $264 million. That puts us second only to Alaska in total seafood production here in the United States. What a lot of people forget is they forget to add the saltwater recreation value of our state to that number. And that alone generates about $757 million in economic impact and about $472 million in direct sales. So if you add the direct economic impact of both our commercial and our recreational industries, and you sum them up, it's a $3.1 billion industry to this state. And so as you can imagine, that's number one to us at Sea Grant as to how we support. And it's a very, it's an industry that has to deal with change. And that change is happening quickly, both with regulation and with environmental change and federal and foreign markets. The impacts on foreign markets are driving us to do what we think is the most important aspect of our program, and that's the quality of our seafood and identifying that quality compared to other seafood around the nation as well as international. So we have what we call Louisiana Fisheries Forward program, which we've been very active as a partnership with the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and it is developing a professional certification for our seafood industry, again, so that our products have an identity and higher market value. We do that through various training exercises and certification programs. And I'll make one other comment related to that. And every state is facing this, and particularly we just had an interaction in Alaska, and that's the aging of our fishing industry. Our average age of our fleet, if you want to call them that, is about 58 years old. And so the entry into this industry and sustaining it is a big part of our focus related to the training and our Louisiana Fisheries Forward program. We also are very proud of our history in developing the crawfish industry. Back in the 1930s, some of the first work was done. Of course, the natural crawfish was coming out of the basin for years, but we were able to work with rice farmers and start reflooding fields to where today that's a $112 million industry in the state. There's 120,000 acres of crawfish that are actually under cultivation. Most of that, again, because it's double cropped with our rice fields. But that's a very, and the reason the number in itself is not a big number. But remember, a lot of industries that I'm going to mention are industries that diversify and allow farmers to actually, have seasonal income, and it becomes a very important part of our sustainability. Another one that you don't hear much about, but with the HACCP program, we do all the training, quite a bit of the training for our sanitation and seafood that's required, or federal training that's required of processors to meet new and revised seafood safety and sanitation guidelines. We provide this training to our seafood industry. Just recently, our catfish industry went through a whole new set of regulations. And like I say, when you talk about change, these changes come on quick. If you're not adept and you can't provide this service, these small business owners have a real hard time keeping up with the federal programs. We're very proud of our impact on the oyster industry. We've had an oyster hatchery, which is down in Grand Isle, which now is a brand new facility. We opened in 2015. We can raise 1 billion larvae in a year. It's one of the largest, most productive larvae hatcheries in the Gulf. and we're really looking forward to that, to expanding to provide the seed that's going to be needed to restore our oyster industry, which is, in the future is going to deal with quite a bit of environmental change. We are also very proud of our direct marketing program. I've got some brochures that you can look at. With this town of Delcambre, after the Hurricane Rita, we helped secure a development block grant, open up a platform where boats could come in and sell their shrimp directly to customers. We had 36,000 pounds of shrimp. That one process alone raised the tax revenue in Erath and Delcambre by 6%. Again, small little things. We're doing this now in Delacroix. We're very excited about a similar facility in Bucktown in New Orleans. And again, this is where we promote direct sales of seafood. And what that gives us, we're not a corporate seafood industry. We're individual. These are all individual owners of these boats. They've got all the individual investment and risk. And so any way that we can help them turn a little bit higher margin on their product by selling directly keeps them more sustainable. Now, besides seafood, we help coastal communities during crisis. A lot of our extension agents, again, we have 9 offices across the state. Our extension agents live in these communities. They are the first line of response to a large degree, helping FEMA know where to go, who is doing what in these communities. And when we have a crisis, the FEMA agents who move into our state grab onto our Sea Grant agents, and that's who, in fact, our Sea Grant agents ride in the cars with the FEMA agents, taking them around so they know exactly where to go and who to talk to in providing assistance on the front lines. And we also are very helpful in various industries filling out reports and various documents that have to be done after crisis. We also help with the state prepare their estimates of damages during such events. We had a Sea Grant agent actually down at the Incident Command working with the Coast Guard during Deepwater Horizon, and the Coast Guard has now actually initiated a best management practice where they're asking other Coast Guard agents or Coast Guard operations to be standardized, where they use a liaison officer such as a Sea Grant. Again, I want to emphasize this investment when you make in extension programs from the universities to live in these communities. You become a very trusted avenue of helping federal agency response during disasters, and we've provided that. In fact, we have a Vietnamese agent who has been very important in translation and helping our communities as they respond. One of the things we besides fish, one of the things I wanted to make sure our program was noted for is floods. These are 2 big things I think we look at relative to our program. And flooding, what we did there was we took we had the John Laborde or the Laborde family gave one of the first large donations to the LSU Foundation, $600,000 back in 1994. It was actually one of the first major donations to LSU. We went to the Board of Regents and got a $400,000 match. So with that $1 million endowment, we have the John B. Laborde Sea Grant Fellow or endowed professor. And we have hired Scott Hagan, who is an expert in flood simulations. And we're actually working with CPRA now with the new program that we've inherited from the Corps during flood events. A lot of the forecasting that's done to know when you close gates and when you open them, and all of those decisions are made with the models and simulation models that we're running at LSU. It's called the AdCirc model, and it's one of the most sophisticated models related to predicting storm surge, and this has becoming a very important asset. It's also used for planning, so to reduce your flooding risk and exposure. Just put a little footnote on that, just so you know where some of your investments go. That model has 1.2 million nodes in a mesh. Every 55 seconds, it runs the calculations of physics of how water is moving during a flood event. We run those on high-performance computing systems here at LSU, and also the Lonnie network. If it wasn't for Lonnie, which is our Louisiana Optical Network initiative that invested millions of dollars into our computing capabilities at our universities, we could not run these very sophisticated simulation models. And why are we doing it not the federal government? Because our meshes cover parts of the coast that the federal government does not include. I mean, believe it or not, and I think this is still true today, that when they run their models, they only include federal levees. And we have a lot of levees system and a lot of complicated infrastructure on our coast, and it is all in our models that we run at LSU. Not only have we been helpful with coastal communities and fisheries, but healthy coastal ecosystems mean a healthy coastal economy, which includes linking culture. We have a very long history of helping to define what was a cause of wetland loss and how to fix it. And I want to make one quick statement here going back to fisheries. We also, one of our biggest research programs has been on recruitment. I know this time of year in football we talk a lot about recruitment. Well, I want to explain recruitment to a fisheries community. When we harvest fish out every year, you have to replace that with what we call recruitment. And that recruitment back, it's like when the National Football League harvests our players out of LSU, we got to have recruitment to replace them. And now there's like juniors, right, that they take. That taking, if you will, by our fishing industry has to be replaced or your fishery starts to collapse. The environmental conditions, that's what we entrust, the clean environment that we have, and the estuaries of our delta is what we rely on to provide that recruitment of new young, of new shrimp, new crabs that come in our estuaries that get harvested in the next year. A lot of our research investment has been in helping to know exactly the conditions by which we can replenish our estuaries with fisheries to help support our harvest. So just a couple more points. Environmental literacy is a big program for us. Ocean Commotion at LSU, 1,800 kids participate each year. We just celebrated our 21st anniversary. We have Marsh Maneuvers, which is 4-H students down at Rockefeller. We've had over 600 students since 1989. We're celebrating our 29th anniversary. Coastal Roots. Elementary schools, we have over 50 elementary schools that grow their own plants. They build a greenhouse. They grow their own plants at their elementary school, and then they go out and plant them. So when they plant those plants, they get pretty proud because they grew them. And that has been one of our, just a great, and those kids remember that for their lifetime. And we also, a lot of people don't realize how important workforce development, even in we call it this water industry. We work with CPRA in providing graduate student assistantships. We now have been doing that for about six years with CPRA. We've had an undergraduate research program since 1992. We've had 175 students go through that program. We've been funding graduate students since 1971. We've had 1,060 students, including law students, go through our program. So our workforce development is a big part of what we do through our training both undergraduate and graduate students and getting them into the workforce. So my last point is we're very proud that Louisiana Sea Grant was the first Sea Grant program in the nation that developed with the LSU Law School a law and policy program. There are now 7 Sea Grant programs in the nation that have such a program. We were the first. We helped write the Coastal Zone Management Act with the legislature back in the 70s. And we helped just recently when the Coastal Zone Management area was expanded, we helped with that program. We get asked by the legislator to do special research projects such as public access to private lands related to water now or wetlands converting to water, and the confusion over where you can fish. We tackle some of those very complicated projects. And again, our focus is to provide and be the research arm to help both the legislative and executive branches of government. So challenges for the future, just a couple of comments. I am very concerned, the adaptations that's going to be required of us related to the rate at which our delta is changing. Can we keep up? And when we talk about adaptations related to our coastal communities, we call that community resilience. And you got to remember, people follow jobs. And so it's not just our community resilience, but it's the resilience of our industry. And how we align both our more resilient industries and which will build resilient communities in a rate of change that we're going to see and we're seeing in coastal Louisiana is a real concern, and the whole behavioral change that's going to be required to do that at the same time provide economic security. Are a lot of the research objectives that we have in our program to help figure out some of those solutions in the future. That will take a very systems approach. It was a hallmark of our program when we started. We had economists, we have lawyers, we have scientists. This is not just an engineering and geology issue. And my last comment is, the science communication is really critical. And community engagement. A lot of our programs are getting students and faculty down into our communities, meet our community leaders, be able to communicate what they're doing and be able to listen what the problems are so that our program can remain relevant. Relevance is so important to our program to meet the needs of our communities. I offer to the press to use our website. If you're working on a research project or a question or something's coming up, go to our website. Our research materials and background on a lot of these questions I think could be very helpful. Our oil spill program we just got an award for its outreach and engagement. It's a great resource, laseagrant.org. And if you can't find something you're looking for, I'd be glad to help provide any other information. I'll stop there and be glad to take any questions. Yes?
Dr. Twilley, needless to say, since y'all are huge into the oyster industry, the restoration projects on the coast sometimes have an impact on oysters.
That's right.
In particular, although maybe also crabs and lichens on that.
Right.
But the salinity of various places around the coast is changing, either from intrusion from the hurricanes, but then also crabs in efforts to build it back up. Do y'all kind of like mediate between these warring factions? Because there's in my experience, there's nothing worse than facing an angry oyster.
Well, I've learned to do that. I think I'm not quite sure whether I've passed the test, but these are very complicated issues. And to answer your question, the first you have to do is you have to look at what our coast would be without these restoration projects, and that becomes very problematic in itself, because we have salt water moving in, a lot of organisms moving in that are changing our fishing sustainability. And yes, when we put these new restoration features in, we have to understand how we're going to operate them, so that, and I think there are a lot of ways that we can help restore our coast and operate these features so that they also support our industry. And so I'm an optimist, but yes, Sea Grant was asked by the governor to work with Wildlife and Fisheries and with CPRA to work with the various fishing industries to find adaptation strategies that we can all work together on. And we're actually in the process of doing that and should report back our first report to CPRA on December 12th. But we are in the middle of doing that right now. And that is a program, that's what we do. We're a neutral ground, and we are a place where we can have those conversations. Yes?
Do you know anything that you can elaborate on about the most recent oil spill that was announced in the last 24 hours?
No, I can't. No, I'm sorry. No, in the last 24 hours, I'm not. I just flew back from Florida, so I must have missed this report.
Last day or so, it was covered in the paper.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not prepared to respond to that, but I certainly will. Well, I'm certainly our oil spill, Emily Mong Douglas. She tracks this every day, and so she's our oil spill expert on our staff, and I'll guarantee she knows about it. It was around Dulac? Oh, really?
It was a small one, I think it was like 10 barrels of oil.
Oh.
Very small one, they're gonna burn it off.
Huh.
This is the one I'm thinking in the paper that I saw, it's not a huge spill, it's something they're gonna burn right off.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not up to date on that one. Apologize. Yes.
Are you doing any work with the water campus? Or?
Yes. So we we're very much involved in helping with the education outreach component. Again, our environmental literacy we think is really one of the most important factors to having an informed public, so that we can have these discussions, complicated discussions over our restoration program. And so the LSU Center for River Studies has that really fantastic exhibit area. Our LSU Coastal Sustainability Studio, which I work with, designed a lot of what those programs that you see there. We're very proud of that, and we're hoping to expand on that capability. And so we see outreach and education and environmental literacy as our part of that campus. So what I would like to see in the future is Sea Grant helps, because that's a tremendous facility, it's a tremendous campus, it's a tremendous asset to the state. But again, just like everything else, if you're not careful, it gets concealed. And so we want to get it off that water campus and get it down into the community. So that's where I see our role in the future, helping with that. Yes.
As you mentioned, the fishing industry, the age is getting old. What's your vision of how they're going to maintain or improve the aging fleet personnel?
That's a really good question. So Alaska just got awarded. They just received an award for programs that they've developed to tackle this problem. In all these conversations we're having about adaptation strategies for our fishing industry related to restoration projects and other things that they're going to face in the future. I hear over and over again that the generation has got to see an industry that really presents itself as a future. I mean, it's got to present itself. The entry into that into that industry has got to be one where they get a sense that they can make a living. And so, I think that our Louisiana Fisheries Forward program is really out there recruiting through our media and through our discussions with family members to get their family members into this industry. Fishing has always been that way. That's the way it's like farming. Where did your farming recruitment come from? It came from that existing cohort. And so, we've got to build a sense that, and all the rhetoric that we hear is that there isn't much there for them to want to participate in. So we need to. We're working very hard, and we're really hoping that this certification program builds a professional ethic, builds a professionalism in our program, and that we can build entry into that program through licensing, through loans, through other avenues to give them a sense that they can make a living. But if you can't do that, then we're having we'll have a real hard time replacing it. So I put again back on our professionalism and building a professional quality program that people will want to join it and be a part of that in the future. That's the way we're approaching it. And again, that's a strong partnership with the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, because they see it. They really want to try to do that. It's tough. Yes.
What kind of job opportunities exist in your field?
So, you know, we started a new program at LSU, which I'm very proud of. We call it Coastal and Ecological Engineering. You know, and what I see is, you know, the civil engineer in the past is going to have to understand how to build ecosystems that can provide services such as for fisheries. So, you know, I see this sort of complement between coastal science and engineering as a huge field that will be part of the water industry. Second is I do see environmental monitoring. You know, we're building $1 billion worth of projects a year, and those require performance measures. And so, again, in the coastal science area, which that's my background, I see a lot of master's students being part of engineering firms that are out there doing the monitoring on these projects. And, you know, what I tell my students is that this traditional role of going through research and then working back into a university, those days are over. It is just amazing to me to see the number of positions and jobs open up in this water industry, both in the engineering firms. The engineering firms are not just hiring engineers and civil engineers. They're hiring they're hiring ecologists, they're hiring coastal scientists, they're hiring social scientists that can also deal with the social aspects because it's not just, you know, you're doing coastal resilience. You know, people are moving, they're migrating. You know, where's industry going to relocate? That whole relocation program is a whole new set of jobs and career in the engineering and NGOs that did not exist 15, 20 years ago. And so it's a very interdisciplinary requirement to do what we call this sort of coastal restoration in this water industry. Yes?
I guess about the time that the Sea Grant program came to LSU, then apparently the program immediately got into the interest of crawfish.
Yes.
And people out of this area, when they turned up their nose on crawfish, how widespread is the market now? Is it in the world?
Well, it is. You know, there's a pretty big global market. You know, and there are other states that have. South Carolina, you know, has a crawfish farming industry now. You know, that industry started with our you know, the Chaffalay Basin. When our industry started doing the ponds, you could you know, the Chaffalay Basin would fluctuate. You didn't have a guaranteed supply, and the supply chain in any of these fisheries is so important. And when crawfish with 120,000 acres, you could expand your markets. So now we package, right? We seal and package crawfish and sell them in a whole different market than just the live crawfish. And so I think that has expanded, you know, the notice by people outside of Louisiana that this is something really a good product and something that's sustainable. So, you know, the demand is still there. I mean, we see quite a bit of demand on our 120,000 acres. There's still a very strong market, and in fact, with rice production now, crawfish farming is you know, is a pretty good bet with your acre of land. So I think it's a growing. I think you'll see a higher demand as we move forward. The problem is, just like all of our other fisheries, it's a foreign import. That's our biggest concern, is because, you know, there's a lot of Chinese crawfish on the market, and so and whether you're really getting a Louisiana product or whether you're getting a foreign product when you eat seafood, that's probably one of our biggest concerns, and it gets right back to your workforce. You know, this is a system. This is supply chain management. And if we don't build the identity and quality of our products so that people are selective, the consumer is selective, and make sure that they demand Louisiana quality seafood products, then we can't keep the industry, you know, in a sustainable fashion that brings in that young cohort that wants to get involved. And so we've got to make sure we're, you know, that recruitment of new people into this industry gets related to how we deal with the development and marketing of our product to the consumer, and a well-educated consumer. And so I think those two are related, and it's a very, very important part of our job. Yes.
Could you comment on the trade wars going on and how that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll make one comment. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not repeating the question. I'm sorry. So the question was about the trade wars and involvement with the seafood industry and with Sea Grant involvement. Of course, we're not involved with policy directly, particularly at the federal level like that. But I will say one comment about the trade wars. The Commerce Secretary, Secretary of the Department of Commerce, has looked at this as a particular issue within the department, and associated with that is already an uptick in funding for aquaculture. How can we improve our aquaculture capabilities here in the U.S. So that we can be more competitive relative to foreign imports of materials that come across our border? And second, so we've seen about a $4 million increase by Congress in the aquaculture investments, and we are hearing, in fact, any day now we should hear higher increase in that investment. So, and then what we do with those investments is our job at Sea Grant to send out the request for proposals, and we manage the proposals that come in, and we manage the projects that get funded. We had 24 projects just funded recently in that $4 million, and Louisiana got 2. So we have 2 of the 20, that was nationwide. We had 2 projects funded here, one on crabs, looking at crab, and the other one looking at oyster adaptations to higher salinities, or lower salinities, I'm sorry. But, so aquaculture is one. And again, I want to go back to how important it is that we have an informed consumer relative to our seafood product. We have the best seafood product without a doubt on the market, and we just need to find ways to improve the behavior of the consumer related to selecting that product, and knowing, in fact, that it is Louisiana product that's being sold. And those are 2 ways that we think about the influence on foreign markets: aquaculture program and quality of our product on the market. Those are the 2 ways we think about it. Yeah.
Do you think that food safety might be a more explicit part of the quality message than it is now?
I think, certainly we had a big issue during the Deepwater Horizon. We are, working with the oyster industry over new temperature controls, relative to harvest, and that's a big issue if, in fact, oystermen have to go a longer distance and the oysters on their boat for a longer time, and can they meet those temperature requirements. So we're looking in refrigeration and to help with that process. But I think the seafood safety is one that I think we're doing a really good job at. I think that there is an incident just recently of an oyster sickness in the state. But all in all, I think it's more of the identifying our quality versus the foreign imports. It's like someone told me once, once you eat a really good Louisiana shrimp, you won't eat anything else. and I think we've got to identify that. And everyone in this room, there's a tractor trailer of crabs that leaves New Orleans every day and drives up to Baltimore, right? They're eating Louisiana crabs up there. I think it's the identity of our quality, and I think the safety, we're doing a good job. I think our processors, and I think our environmental, the safety of our product, our environmental quality program has a pollution line where we do protect from oyster harvesting, and they do a really good job of that. So I'm pretty confident in the sanitation aspects of it. Yeah.
To your point, I think the crab industry does a much better job of marketing outside the state than the other parts of the seafood industry.
Yeah, I guess the market, you know, we have the largest processor in the entire Gulf is right at Grand Isle, shrimp processor. And so, you know, our shrimp gets quite a wide distribution. It's the price. You know, we get a lower price for Louisiana shrimp than Texas, because Texas has this, you know, identity of a higher quality product. So again, it's the pricing of our quality that maybe if that's what you're including that in your statement,
Well,
you know.
when I go up to the East Coast, I mean, they recognize Louisiana crab up there, and it's readily available as Louisiana crab.
Right.
You
That's
don't see it recognized as
right.
Louisiana shrimp up there.
That's right. No, from that point of view, that's exactly what I mean by identity.
There's no marketing of
You
the
bet.
shrimp.
No, you're right. No,
Travel marketing.
yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. Again, it's the identity. How can the consumer identify our product? Because if they identify our product, they know it's a higher quality, and they'll pay a little bit more for that product. And that is, to me, because then that trickles back, and it goes right back to that young fisherman getting into this business because, you know, they've got the market side of it that helps solidify, which is, you know, there's a reason we call it, you know, we have a product called Delcom Sweet. You know, it's a vermilion-based sweet shrimp. And you know, I worked in Ecuador for years in the shrimp industry, and they had what they would call their shrimp the agua dulce, you know, the sweet shrimp, and the sweet water. And you know, we have the deltas produce a higher quality product than anywhere else. And
We don't market our oysters either outside of Louisiana.
so you've seen them in the stores like when you're in D.C.
DC, San Francisco, New York,
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah,
You don't see them advertised. You see them all over the world except Louisiana.
Yeah, we agree 100% that this identity to get the higher product, the higher price, you know, it is something that we've initiated with this Louisiana Fisheries Forward, and I think there are a lot of avenues for improvement, without a doubt.
There are.
Good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.